So I got an idea for this one, and I don't know how well it'll go. It's kind of a harebrained idea that I started out with that crossed my mind not too long ago, but it occurred to me that actually working in a supermarket at nearly 40 years old, like I had to do a few years ago, taught me something important about AA, and I'll explain as I go along with this. I've said on here before that that I got, unfortunately, I still don't like saying it out loud because, I mean, it is an unpleasant reminder of how out of control I was at one point in my life, but I did have 3 DUIs and a couple of public intoxication arrests and a couple other things, and I've been through the drug court situation. So in the real world, I didn't have much. I didn't have a lot of options when it come to the employment thing, and plus I was living with an AA old timer I was renting a garage from. It was a really less than ideal living condition, to say the very, very least, if I was going to make an understatement about it. But and that situation went all to hell, and I ended up. Well, that's another long story, and maybe another even video or whatever in of itself. But after I had left AA, and I left AA, and I was convinced that I was going to drink myself to death, and I was convinced I was eat up with a lot of despair and a lot of depression at the same time, because, like I said, most of the opportunities in terms of being able to support myself were kind of closed. When I was able to get a picture ID from the state, it's not a driver's license, it's a picture ID. In this particular state, it has, in big red letters on the ID itself, it says DUI offender. So, you walk into a job, you give a halfway decent interview, even before the background check thing begins, they say, let me see a copy of your driver's license or your social security card, and you hand that to them, and they're like, oh, well, we'll call you. Thanks for coming in, though. You pretty much know. I worked for a lot of shitty temp agencies, and I worked for some landscaping companies and some lawn care companies. Some of the lawn care companies actually were not that bad. I have a few pleasant memories during the time doing that. I liked working outside. I actually kind of like, just being outdoors and working in people's gardens. I worked alone a lot, and it gave me an opportunity not to have to interact much. But after I was kicked out of my landlord's place, and I pretty much had left AA, and I was still kind of trying to, going back and forth with whether or not I was going to be able to quit drinking or not, which turned out to be surprisingly easy when I left AA. And I got again, is a whole entire... That's another video in of itself, so I won't go into a tangent on that. But a couple of years passed, and I was getting a little tired of working for landscaping companies. A lot of those people are crooked contractor types. You don't get paid on payday, or if you do get paid, it's shorted. You get people that treat you like shit. Even working with landscaping companies, with the background that I had, they were still frowning heavily at me for having the DUIs because, they want you to be able to drive company pickups to job sites. They want you to be able to, hop in the vehicle, the crews take turns driving, all that kind of thing. Due to the severity of my offenses, if I was caught driving any vehicle on the road, it would have been a year in prison and thousands of dollars worth of fines, and possibly the never being able to get a license again. So I just refused to do it. There were a lot of people who said, well, I drive without a license. Why don't you drive without a license? And I just wasn't going to do it. I caught a lot of shit from the landscaping crews as a result of that. There was one particular asshole I remember talking about that I was no different or no better than all those Mexicans on the crew. The guys that were here illegally couldn't speak the language very well, that got overworked and treated like shit by these particular crew owners. I got treated just as bad as they, because I had committed DUIs. I was a ex-criminal, ex-convict type is the way they were looking at it. These people were scum of the earth, by the way, but any time that people have an opportunity to feel superior over another and make that person suffer, I found out that there's more than enough volunteers who are willing to jump in and do that. So I was just tired of that. I was tired of that atmosphere, I'm not saying all landscape companies are like that. It was just this very last landscaping company I was working for. They were pieces of shit. They were crooks, and I was just done. And I said, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get back into the regular working world again, but I'm going to try, And the only place that answered any of my applications, it was a supermarket. And I remember right before I went to them, I had gone to this temp agency, and I said, look, I'm not having any luck finding anything outside of what I'm doing for a living because of my background. And the guy behind the counter said, well, what's your background? And I told him, and he said, well, we're talking misdemeanors, okay? I've got people out there working in warehouses and making fairly decent wages that are, they have armed robbery, they have hijacking and carjacking and attempted murder, okay? So I don't understand what you're saying. You can't get a job because of your background. But long story short, I ended up going to work at this supermarket. The managers that interviewed me, of course, the first thing they did, they saw my ID, and I wasn't going to try to play any games. I just come straight, clean. I said, look, I've got 3 DUIs, I've got some public intoxication, I've got the drug court thing in the background. It had only been like 3 years since I had been convicted of all of this stuff, so I said, all this is going to come up, and they made me, they kind of, put the thumb screws to me a little bit. They were talking about, well, it's against our better judgment to hire an ex-convict. It's against our better judgment to hire somebody like you, but we're really short-staffed right now and we need you. And they lied, of course. They said this conversation will go nowhere. And, of course, it went everywhere. When I got started, I kept getting that kind of treatment from a lot of managers. This supermarket's giving you a chance, so, we're watching you. If you fuck things up, you'll be gone, And then, of course, there were the younger people that worked there. I'd hear these little snide comments going in my direction that, honestly, I wanted to throw everything down like in my second, third week, and I just wanted to walk. I wanted to say, something, I'm getting fucking old here. I was almost 40 back then. But I said, I'm getting fucking older, and I just don't have the patience for this kind of crap. And then another part of me was saying, yeah, well, you got to start somewhere to get back into the working world again. This won't be eternal. This won't be permanent. Just try to do the best you can do. It was rough at first. I'm not going to lie. I had to put up with snide comments from customers on occasion. Guy your age and you're bagging groceries, and all that kind of shit. And I went home some days and I was either so angry I thought I was going to have a stroke, or I was so depressed I thought I was going to, just die from depression or something like that. And this is not a complete downer story, I promise. There's a point to all this. I'm not just meandering on my pain and misery of working in a supermarket at 40. But the first thing that I did is the same kind of strategy I've used everywhere I ever worked in life. I kept a low profile. I didn't say a lot. I pretended not to hear the remarks. I pretended not to hear the jokes. I pretended the customers sometimes it really would, get to me underneath, but I just said, look, you got to have to make a go of this. You got to try to do the best you can with it. I kept getting stuck with cleaning bathrooms at 5 a.m. in the morning because, the other people, when I'd tell them to clean the bathrooms, they'd do a half-assed job. And what I did is I turned it into a game in my mind. I said, well, if I got to clean these fucking bathrooms at 5 a.m., you know what? I'm just going to make them as clean as possible. I'm going to make them pristine. I'm going to make them like Andy Griffith did in that movie, No Time for Sergeants. I don't know if you ever saw that comedy or not, where he's in the Army and he gets latrine duty. But I just worked really, really, really hard. Hard as I could work. I turned it all into a game. Let me see how good of a job I could do in as little as time as possible. If they made me go out and get shopping baskets, I'd say, well, let me get as many shopping carts and shopping baskets as I can, as fast as I can. Let me do a real good job here. Let's see if I can beat my goals. I had to do something to keep it interesting. I had to do something to keep myself from going crazy, Over time, I was only there about a year and a half. Over time, and this is kind of where I'm getting to the point of this video, the managers who gave me such a hard freaking time about hiring me, the ones that were like, it's against our better judgment to hire you here, it's against our better judgment for you to even be here and everything, they transferred out. The people that were giving me such a hard way to go, the other employees about, being who I was, they quit, left, transferred, whatever. It was kind of funny because rumors always fly. I don't care where you're working. I don't care if you're working in a supermarket. I don't care if you're working on a construction crew. I don't care if you're working in a warehouse. Rumors are going to fly. And so, originally when the story got out that I was like this ex-convict or whatever, I kept hearing things that would get back to me about what I had done. I kept hearing I had done armed robbery. I kept hearing I had done murder. I had done 17 years in state prison and everything. And the harder you try to get rid of the rumors, the more it intensifies. So I didn't say anything. I just said, there's nothing I can do. Until I leave this place, I just got to make the best of it. So I just kept making it a game. I just kept saying I'll work hard as I can, and I'll do the best I can as fast as I can. I had to create little games and little distractions and things like that. And over time, I noticed that the overall, there was still a little stigma there, but it kind of created a little bit of a mystery around me too. Over time, people started to get a little bit more friendly towards me, maybe after 6 or 7 months. Of course, we get different people, different managers and all that, but I couldn't really relate to nobody in terms of conversation. I couldn't really relate to nobody in terms of talking. I mean, their conversations was like alien conversations to me. I mean, they were talking about regular, ordinary, everyday things, and I just couldn't fit with this. Like I said, at the time, I only had 2 moods. One was angry and one was depressed. Somewhere along the way, I don't know where the realization hit me, and this is how AA ties into this equation. I had been living in a sick world, and that's what AA is. It's a sick world. I had been living in that sick fucking world for so long that I no longer knew how to communicate with everyday ordinary people. I was so used to being treated like a freaking ex-convict with like a leper or something like that from the ordinary people, and I was so used to hearing about no conversation I had in years, okay, over a decade. The only conversations and interactions I had with the majority of the people in my life was either about drugs, about alcohol, about the steps, about meetings, about sponsors. It was the hideous AA gossip. It was the rumor mills. It was, I'd been in a mental hospital for attempted suicide. I may talk about that one day. I'm not ready to as of today. I'd been in drug court. I'd been through jails. I'd been through rehabs and more AA and more AA. I had lived in a sick world for so long that it was kind of hard for me to figure out, how to fit back into regular everyday life. I didn't want to fit in. I don't believe in becoming a part of anything. I believe when you try to become a part of something, you kind of sell out a little bit of who you are. You sell out a little bit of who you are and what you are just to fit in. So I didn't want to be a part of with this supermarket. But I realized that, and like I said, I just kept a low profile. I didn't say a lot. I kept my head kind of down. But over time, I kind of gained a lot of respect from them because I was such a hard worker. And I'm not saying that to brag either. There's one thing that I can 100% say honestly. I work hard wherever I work. Call my former bosses if you wanted to. But I began to realize I didn't, like I said, I didn't do a lot of social interaction or anything. But I began to realize that I had some kind of small modicum of respect in this place. I began to learn how to deal with really rude and hostile customers. I began to learn tricks to get around people. There was one customer I had, every time she'd come to the cash register, she would ask for certain types of cigarettes, and she wanted certain lottery tickets, and she wanted her groceries done in paper bags, not plastic bags. And every time she would get to the cash register, she would always throw a big temper tantrum about nobody in the store being smart enough to know what she wanted. Well, I just memorized it. She'd get to the register, I'd say, oh, these are for you, this is your lottery ticket, and I've already got your paper bags right there. It was almost kind of fun in one way because I was kind of learning how to deal with the general population of people that I really did not like at the time. But I kind of almost learned the type of people skills I had never had to employ before in life. It became almost fun in some kind of weird way. I remember I was walking out. I didn't have a car in these days. I had to walk everywhere. And, I almost felt like I was in some kind of fucking movie. You ever seen these movies where the ex-convict is trying to go straight, and inevitably in every one of those movies, he always gets sucked back into crime, and by the end of the movie, he's going back to prison, or he does a robbery or something. Something goes terribly wrong in these movies. They never show a movie where an ex-convict actually, fits back in or finds his own way or his own path. It's always the ex-convict gets out, gets a shitty job, commits another robbery or whatever. And but anyway, I was walking, And there was these group of maybe they were a little underage, maybe no, I think they were underage. These teenagers, they would do this every Friday afternoon if they were going to get the weekend off. They would get by this guy's pickup truck and they'd all have these little shots and they'd take shots together. They would yell out some weird fucking thing right before they would drink. They'd all hold their glasses up and they'd scream something and they would drink them. And most of the time, these people ignored me. They didn't talk to me very much. But I was walking by one afternoon, and there was one of them that yelled out, "Hey, you want to come over here? You want to take a shot with all of us?" I didn't want to be rude, but I just held my hand up and I said, "Hey, I got to catch a bus down here. If I don't make the bus, I won't, get to it." So I kind of walked away. That created some weird feelings inside of me for a minute, these leftover AA type of feelings. It created a weird sensation. And I just said to myself, well, they're kids. Let them have their fucking fun. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, what were you doing when you were 16, 17 years old? I kind of didn't bother me. I kind of kept on going. But there was a funny little shift in thinking when this happened. I was like, nobody here sees me any longer as this ex-convict. Nobody sees me as this drunk who had 3 DUIs any longer. Nobody here is judging me like the AA people did for being a chronic relapser, and nobody here is looking at me like a bum and a loser like the way the AA people talk to me, which I would not talk to anybody like that, by the way. I don't treat anybody less than me. I don't care if they're a janitor or a homeless person or whatever, but nobody was doing that to me any longer. And as I was walking, it was a nice spring day, which, we're kind of getting close to spring here, even though they're going to predict snow tonight. Pissed me off with that one. But I was walking away and I realized nobody at this store sees me as anything other than just another guy who's working at this store. Nobody sees me as anything, like the way the AA people had done. I had lived so long in this sick, hideous world that was AA, that was comprised of rehabs and jail and drug court and mental hospitals and more rehabs and jail and homelessness and toxic sponsors and all those toxic meetings and everything. It had been so long since I had not been a part of that shit that I had forgotten what it was like to just be an ordinary person that's just doing their thing. And I was walking away and I kind of felt like, all I've been feeling here for the longest time is rage and depression. Rage and depression. Those are my only 2 emotions. And and I was able to drop that a little bit. It was one of the first times, it wasn't like this big moment of clarity or nothing like that, but it was one of the first times I realized that AA itself is a very, very sick and very, very unbalanced and very, very unhinged society that breeds more sickness. It breeds more problems. It doesn't create solutions. It just brings more pain, more suffering, more sickness, and it makes your mental illnesses and your addictions 50 times worse. And that walking away from AA was probably the only way that I would have ever been able to overcome alcohol abuse. I don't think living in a society like the society I had been living in for so long, that sick, twisted, fucked up society, there was no way I would have ever been able to clean up my act in a society like that. I'm going to close this out with this particular thought. When I finally did able to get back into the working world and a little bit better off, when I finally had to leave that supermarket, it was weird. I was walking out the door for the last time, and I was getting my last paycheck, and one of the top store managers was saying, "Hey, we're going to miss you. If you ever need a job, you know where to come. You can come back here any time." And I was almost emotional. I said, why the hell do I feel like crying about leaving a supermarket? Why am I crying about this almost? I didn't really cry, but I was thinking that to myself. I was really overcome with emotion because I hadn't been treated like another human being in so long. I hadn't been treated like just an ordinary guy in so long that I didn't even know what that was like hardly any longer. Everybody I had been dealing with for over a decade was either preaching at me for being a relapser, was either putting the thumb screws to me for fucking up, was either family members reminding me of what a failure I was always going to be, that I was never going to amount to anything, that I was nobody and no one. It had been so long since I had had any kind of semblance of something that looked like normalcy again that it was difficult for me to even recognize it. It was very emotional. To recognize that I was just another guy that's trying to do his thing and try to get by. So I don't know if anybody will get anything out of that or not. It was just some ideas that floated around in my head when I was recently dealing with some things at work that looked like even maybe a possible promotion for me or something like that. It caused me to reflect back. I don't believe in doing a lot of reflecting back on the past, to be honest. Yeah, I just kind of had some scattered thoughts in my head and decided to put them together for this. It's been 20 minutes and 15 seconds, so I think I've rambled or blabbered or whatever I've done long enough. Until next time.